Spiritual entrepreneurship. Tell me what it means put together for you.
We business owners, our business is a form of expressing who we are in the world. And it turns out that every business problem is really a personal problem that shows up in business. And every personal problem is ultimately a spiritual problem. Most of us get into personal development because we feel not enough, right? I'm not rich enough. I'm not beautiful enough. Another Lambo isn't going to do it. Another million isn't going to do it. And that's where we get into the spiritual side.
Every business problem is really a personal problem. And every personal problem is really a spiritual problem. That is so good and so profound.
We spend a lot of our waking hours working on our business. My thinking is, might as well be why you're here. Might as well make it your life purpose. Might as well do the thing in the business that you're here to do on this planet, to let it be that expression of who you are. What is your mission? How do you want to serve people? And it really came to me that I'm here to integrate spirituality and entrepreneurship. The spiritual side is also about knowing ourselves and doing our inner works so that we can create a business from where we are sharing our gift. Companies become a reflection of the founder or the CEO or the leader. And so the more that we are clean instruments, the more we can be effective in our bigger mission.
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And if this is your first time listening, welcome. Glad to have you and hope you get maximum impact today. And if you find impact in this episode, please share it. We love to spread the message far and wide. And for those longtime Spartan listeners, you know what to do. Continue sharing these messages. I appreciate you so much. All right. That being said, I am meeting today's guest for the first time. But I'm excited because I saw one of our mutual friends. We got to speak a little bit before the show. He's one of my closest friends in the world, Carl Detman. And you guys know each other. You're in a similar group. So Carl, once you hear this, you got the shout out today. And some of the mutual friends that come along with this, it's fun to meet. So we got speaker, author, investor, founder of Simplero, and spiritual business coach. Please join me in welcoming Calvin Correli to the show. Welcome, brother.
Thank you, Josh. It's great to be here. It's great to meet you.
Absolutely. So a fun fact to kick us off, you started coding at age 5. I'm going to need you to explain this for us because that's super impressive. That is not how I spent my 5-year-old days.
No. Yeah.
So take us back to the beginning there.
I was really lucky in that way because my parents, so I'm born in 1974. I'll be 50 in 20 days. And my parents got into coding in the around like early 70s. So like around that time, a little bit before I was born. So they were both studying. My mom was studying chemical engineering. My dad was studying mechanical engineering, but they met this early IT computer guy in Denmark, where I'm from, that got them down that path. And there were literally like 5 computers in the entire country. It's not like now we have an Apple Watch that's like, 10 times more powerful, like not even 10, but like 1,000,000 times more powerful. Back then there was like 5 and they took up a whole room full. And so they learned to code. And then by the time I rolled around and I got a little bit older, my dad started teaching me at night at home. And we had all these like computers at home that I don't know, like my parents would get home for a variety. I think my mom was like writing reviews for some early computer magazines, and my dad bought them just for us to play with. And my mom actually started a software company in 1980 to write software for small personal computers, but the PC wasn't invented till 83. So she was like writing pre-PC. And then when the PC came out, it was like clear that that's the market is going. And then they focused exclusively on that. But yeah, just born into that. And I took a liking to it. I think my older brother, he had friends and I had computers, right? I was insecure and scared of people and they would say things. I was like a very sensitive kid. So computers were my safe space.
That's cool. Well, you've made some good friends now, and Carl and Dimitri, and now we're becoming friends. And so you figured your path out. So tell us a little bit more about that transformation of your professional career from exiting to living.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it wasn't until 2019, so that's 5 years ago, that was kind of my coming out. to learn that maybe humans aren't that scary. I say that a little bit tongue in cheek because obviously like it wasn't like I was sitting in a basement all that time, but I was still like, I have a software company, and up until that time, I was very much still like in the code every day. At one point, I hired a really smart engineer and then he kind of took over and ran with it. And I was like, dude, you're so much better than me. Like, you got this. And then I went on this whole detour of like playing music and writing songs and like getting into production, all that kind of stuff. But then he quit. He quit to start his own thing. And then I was like, crap. And then I had a year, 2018, where I was back behind the computer every day, just coding to like make this thing keep evolving. And I struggled to find engineers. And then finally, kind of at the end of 2018, I was like, sat down with my team, like, we got to crack this. And we figured it out. We cracked it. And then 2019 was when I went to Necker Island with a bunch of entrepreneurs and met Richard Branson. And I think there's something about being stuck on that island for a week with 30 strangers and not being able to run away like I normally would. That forced me to confront a bunch of my, school year pains and wounds and insecurities that got me to realize, oh, I can be amongst other people and not be like a ball of pain. So it's not that long ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you go from existing to living, and it took you, till about 45 to really feel comfortable in your own skin around some other high functioning people. And has there been some more work that you've put into yourself since then over the last few years?
Yeah. I mean, I had put a lot of work into myself before that. It really kicked off 21 years ago now in 2003. I started my first company as an adult. I did stuff when I was a kid too, made money writing software from I was 12 years old. Not a ton, but like a lot for a 12-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In 2003, I was like flying high and like won a Startup of the Year award and called an advisory board meeting with a handful of the smartest people I knew. And one of them, after, he looked me in the eyes and he said, dude, we've been here for 3 hours. I still don't know what you want. And it was such a mind fuck for me because I was like, what do you mean? I just want to build a big business. Tell me how to build a big business. And then I realized that I had this belief that you can't want anything in business. Like, you don't bring yourself into the business. It's just business. And I realized that was wrong. And then I realized I had no clue. I had no clue. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. I was just so like, I got to be successful. I got to be like a billionaire by age 30 or I shouldn't exist. And it took me like that. That's the point where I said, okay, I need some help. I had this belief too, that you have to be a multi-billionaire by 30 and you can't get any help because then you're broken and you have to prove yourself. Right. And if you don't hit that, like, you might as well go kill yourself. And it's crazy because when you think about it, most people aren't multi-billionaires by age 30. Right. And so what about all those other people? Like, why can they live when I can't,
Yeah. How do they exist?
Right. And the world would kind of be boring if it was only like multi-billionaires. Like, that wouldn't be fun. So, yeah.
Well, and so I just sit there and think about where do you think that belief came from?
I think partly like I came into this world with like a filter that was just, I'm wrong. So I would filter everything through that lens of there's something wrong with me. What is it that's wrong with me? And then I think my dad was like, I never felt like I was seen or loved by my dad. And I don't know that dads necessarily are capable of seeing their kids, but I never felt loved. And even though he told me he loved me, it never really landed. Never felt it. And so that combined with, he would always point to, oh, look at this person. He's made all his money. And this other person, he's all his money. And look at this big house, this person. Like, so in my mind, that became, oh, you have to be like the bat. Like, that's the only way to get my dad's love, right?
To get approval and love through that.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because Then some years ago, like for many years, I was struggling financially and like I kept like bumbling around. And then finally in the past 10, 15 years or so, like in my 40s, like I started to get traction and actually get somewhere. And I had a conversation with my dad late one night and we were a little bit drunk. And then he says, look, son, I could never really figure out who you were, like what kind of creature you are. I never felt like I understood you. And I wasn't sure I really liked you that much, but I feel like I'm starting to get you now. And I really fucking love you. And it was such a beautiful thing because I was like, oh, that's what it felt like to me. And I don't blame him. Like I'm a weirdo, but it was really gratifying to hear him say that, my perception matched up with reality. It wasn't me that was like, got it wrong. I love my dad. I'm so grateful for everything that he's given me. But like it was really great to hear.
Yeah. I mean, we all have this, like this growing up, especially when we're kids, we think, our fathers, especially as young boys, our fathers are our heroes. Mm-hmm. And we just seek and crave their approval and love so much. And I got that through playing sports because I was an ADD kid and I'm just a few years younger than you. So back when we were growing up, ADD and ADHD wasn't a real big diagnosis. So teachers and my parents really didn't know what to do with me. And so the normal school setting wasn't great for me, but I was great at sports. Mm-hmm. And I could get approval from my dad through sports. So I focused on that. And so now, growing up and then you become an adult. And for me, I became a father and I'm like, there's these things that were unresolved. And you said you were a little bit drunk with your dad. I've been up hunting with my dad and over some bush lights at the deer camp or whatever. I'm able to talk to him about some stuff that I didn't like that he did. Yeah. And some of his comments back were, well, that's how my dad treated me. And so I've had these epiphanies, so I don't blame him for any of that, much like you're not blaming your father. I just sit there and think there's stuff that we get to unlearn. And then there's also stuff now being a father myself where I get to go, well, I'm not going to pass that on to my kids because just because my dad did that to me doesn't mean that's how I'm going to be for my kids. In fact, I'm going to make sure that I tell them I love them every day. In fact, I'm going to make sure I tell them, and approve of their choices and don't have to like them. But they're never going to they're not going to feel that love for me, or they're always going to feel that love for me. They're not going to feel a void in that regard. So like we get to break those chains. We get to make those choices to break those chains now and unlearn some of the things that, we learned from our parents that they were doing the best they could, but they just didn't know better.
Yeah. No, I love that. Actually, a key, well, and it's worth remembering too, we're always going to fuck up our kids, right? Like you can't avoid that. It's just a matter of how they're going to get fucked up and like how badly, but they're going to be fucked up. But I had a key moment with my dad where I kept holding on to like a blame thing for a long time of like, oh, he should have, if only blah, blah, blah. Right. And then finally it was like, I was sitting with one of my mentors and he was like, he had me write a list of all the ways like that I was broken, emotionally and whatnot. And then write a list of all the ways my dad was broken. And the lists were almost identical. Mm-hmm. Right? And then he was like, all right, I want you to call your dad and tell him what he most needs to hear. And I want you to lie and just say what he most needs to hear from you. And I was like, okay. And I knew exactly what I was going to say. So I called him up and I said, Dad, I want you to know that you're the best dad I could have ever wished for. And his response was, are you in therapy? You're full of shit. And I was prepared. So I said, no, I mean it. And here's why. And I gave him reasons like you kept me safe and you taught me how to code, which has been invaluable. And a third thing. And it's like his approach to business was real. And he's really inspiring to me. He would go in and he'd figure shit out and then he'd set it straight. And he took it in and it completely melted him. And it completely melted me. When I said it, it felt like a lie. The moment he received it, it was true. Mm. And since that moment, it's been the total and honest truth to me that I had the best dad I could have ever wished for. And what I realized after was that we'd been in this holding pattern where I was waiting for his love and he was waiting for mine. And none of us would give in until, thankfully, thanks to my mentor, I gave in. Even though it felt like a lie in the moment, I gave in and it became true.
Set you both free.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. All right.
And he was a changed man. Like for I was talking to my mom. She was like, what did you do to your dad? Like he was like, for weeks after, he was just floating. He was on a different planet. It was wild.
And sometimes we get to be the teacher and mirror to our parents, our heroes.
Yeah. And
you were that for him.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So I want to pivot here a little bit. There's a term, you may have coined this, maybe not, but the spiritual entrepreneurship, a term that's new to me. And I get both spiritual and I get both entrepreneurship. But tell me what it means put together for you.
It means like we business owners, entrepreneurs, we spent a lot of our waking hours working on our business, right? We put our products and services out there. Our business is a form of expressing who we are in the world. Well, at its best, it is, right? So regardless, if you're doing a business, you're working a lot on it. You're spending a lot of time on it, a lot of effort, a lot of energy. My thinking is, might as well be why you're here. Might as well make it your life purpose. Might as well do the thing in the business that you're here to do on this planet, to let it be that expression of who you are. Otherwise, why are you wasting your time and everybody else's time on this? Right? And that's what I saw. I came to this from my background in tech, where it was all like, we're going to be like the Facebook for the like moms and blah, blah, blah. These like mental constructs. I'm like, no, show me your heart. Like, why are you here on this earth? What is your mission? What is it you want to, how do you want to serve people? Let's start with that and then create the business around that. That's really the essence of it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I sometimes have, because I've been in a lot of mentorship roles, and in my previous career was actually being, I recruited and mentored and developed Carl as a financial advisor. And so I did a lot of that mentoring and leading, and they would come in with great goals. And I'd say, why is that important to you?
Yeah.
And then they give me a reason. I'd say, okay, but why is that important to you? And you get to about the fifth why, and they finally realize why it's important to them. Or they don't. And they say, actually, that's not important to me at all. This is what's important. But the point is like that question behind the question, and continue to dig and dig and dig till you get to the actual heart of the matter, that core purpose that's true north to them. And that's the reason they're in business. That's the reason they want to solve a problem. That's the reason they want to serve people, or whatever it may be, depending on the entrepreneur journey that they're on. So yeah. I love that, because God gave us, whether you believe in God or not, like the universe, God, whatever, like for me, God gave us all these just unique gifts and infinite depths to those gifts. And I just feel like it's our mission to find out how deep those gifts actually go, and then give them back to the world.
Mm-hmm. I love that way of putting it. Yeah. Find out how deep those gifts go. Yeah. And they're deep. They've got roots like your teeth or something, your oak tree. Yeah.
That's right.
Like that. Love that. Yeah.
There are roots and root systems to it.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. The other part to me is about like, as you embark on business, like, you're as an entrepreneur, whatever patterns you have are going to be exaggerated, right? If you're in a big part of a big company, well, there's all these other people that balance you out. But as a founder, as a leader, as the CEO of a small business, like your patterns, if you're steering into that brick wall, you're going to go into that brick wall real fucking fast. And so all your issues come up big time. And it turns out that every business problem is really a personal problem that shows up in business. And every personal problem is ultimately a spiritual problem, meaning like we get into all the personal, like basically most of us get into personal development because we feel not enough, right? I'm not rich enough. I'm not successful enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not like whatever. And like, let me learn the thing. How do I make more money? How do I get fit? How do I get the wife? Like whatever it is, we learn the things. And then we realize, oh shit, I still don't feel good enough. Right. Another Lambo isn't going to do it. Another million isn't going to do it. Another house isn't like, fuck, what now? And that's where we get into the spiritual side.
And in fact, all those things, that another million, that Lambo, all that stuff just accentuate the problem. Mm-hmm. It just accentuates the problem. What you said is so beautiful and so true. Every business problem is really a personal problem, and every personal problem is really a spiritual problem. That is so good and so profound. Because you're so right. And for those that are listening right now, they're probably having these just like light bulbs go off, because any interaction they've ever had in business, any emotional reaction they've ever had is somehow an emotional personal trigger to them, not a business issue. It's an interpersonal issue because of some trigger or alarm that went off inside of them from a past trauma or an unhealed resolution with their spirituality.
Yeah.
So, that is so good.
Yeah.
So the practice of this spiritual entrepreneurship gave you a really beautiful gift. And we talked about the Simplero. Introduce us a little bit to that.
Yeah. So I had the realization, in 2008, after having been on this journey for 5 years, I had that moment of like, what is it I'm really here to do? If it's not just like, how do I make money and how do I become a billionaire before 30? Like, what is it that I really want to do? And I took some time. I sat down, worked through it, like journal on and do the things, right? And it really came to me that I'm here to integrate spirituality and entrepreneurship. So it's that, like the spiritual side, like I said, like being on purpose, but it's also about knowing ourselves and doing our inner work so that we clear the trauma and the wounding and all the survival mechanisms and all of those beliefs that are in the way, so that we can create a business from where we are sharing our gifts and where we're clean. I was at a workshop with a lady named Debbie 4 years ago, and her phrase was being a clean instrument. Right? If you're a founder that has all kinds of like neediness and like you need approval from people, or you need their energy, or you need like things to feel good enough about yourself. Like all that stuff is going to seep into every aspect of your business. I mean, you can even see it like at large companies, right? You can see how like the different companies become a reflection of the founder or the CEO or the leader, like the brand, the feel of them, right? And so the more that we are clean instruments, the more we can be effective in our bigger mission.
Yes. Yeah. So how do you go about doing that? Especially, do you work mostly with entrepreneurs, or do you get into big companies as well?
No, only entrepreneurs. Okay. I have no knowledge about big companies or particular interest in big companies. I love really like just the people that are like, driven by a founder that has a gift that they want to get out there. And then it's about building the systems and structures really around that. So it becomes a founder's company.
Yeah, that's really good. That is really good. So I don't know if you know a little bit about my background, but so when I sold the financial firm and I started this coaching practice full time, I leaned into EOS. Mm-hmm. And because I felt a little bit hamstrung by being a part of a Fortune 100 company previously, they had all the systems and processes. So I had leadership development. Like I know I could do that well, but there was two main issues that every company and every founder or operator was encountering. And then there's 136 issues underneath there, but there's two main ones: human development and then processes and systems to help them scale and grow. And so I had the human development, and we're always evolving in that and growing and learning, but I'm very skilled in that. The systems and processes, I felt a little hamstrung because I come out of that company and I start my own, and I'm like, well, what email system do I want to use? What CRM is even good out there? What calendar set? Like all of that stuff had been previously chosen for me. And that's just the 30,000 foot view stuff. That's not even the nitty gritty workflows and SOPs and all the different stuff that we can get into. So it was fascinating to me. So I searched around for a bit to figure out, and I was familiar with EOS from reading Traction years ago, but I searched around for a bit to see what was going to be the best system that I could find that I could get developed in to be able to help the entrepreneurs that I was influencing. And so now, a lot of my days are talking systems and processes, and that is not something that I ever thought that I would be doing, whereas you have been around systems and processes your whole life.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Yeah. And so the way that Simplero came about was because I was like, this idea of working spiritual growth with the founders so they can be better at sharing their gift in the world. That's I need to share this message. I need to start coaching people about that. And so I discovered this whole world of online courses and online marketing and all that stuff. And I started doing that. And then I didn't like the software. So I started just building my own software for myself and my own business. And then people started asking me if they could use it too. And then that became a business, right? So the Simplero is that software, like all the things. I run my entire business on Simplero. So all the things that you need to run whether it's a coaching or consulting or information type service-based business around you and your genius. And the problem is that most people end up with like 9 different platforms, right? So now they're like, I need a website and an email marketing thing, and I need a shopping cart, and I need some like maybe a membership site or community and video hosting, like affiliates and funnels and landing pages, like all these things. And you have to figure out how to connect them all together with Zap.
Yeah, how do they integrate?
Right. And you have to understand them all. And then you're like, did I get the right? Should I have done ConvertKit or Active-Campaign or MailChimp? Like, oh, shit. And then you meet someone who's like, no, you know how to do pipe drops. Okay, let me do pipe drop. Well, but what about the thing? It just becomes this nightmare. You're wasting all your time figuring all that crap out rather than like building your business. And I don't know, for me, a huge driver for me, energy-wise in business, like gluing shit together with Zap that zaps my energy, right? Being intimate with you here, having intimacy with my clients, with my team, that gives me energy. So it's like, let's do the things that are energy rich for you and that not spend too much time on the things that zap your energy.
Yes. Which, by the way, me personally trying to figure out all the stuff that you just mentioned, which is now part of my world, which I never thought it would be, starting this out and figuring out what funnels are. Now I'm trying to teach my wife what funnels are. And I never had to think about that. And so in my previous life. And so now I'm trying to figure all that out is a nightmare. So having to rely, being able to rely on people that know that and actually enjoy that is immensely helpful.
Yeah.
Immensely.
Yeah. And the next thing that happens when you go down that path and you glue it all together is then after you've worked so hard for like 2.5 years and finally your business is like at a point where like, you know what, let me go on vacation to the Caribbean or Florida or something and just like sip Mai Tais by the ocean for a week and just take a break with my partner, my family, whatever. And then on the first night, something breaks and you're finding yourself sitting in the hotel bar with shitty Wi-Fi, trying to figure out what the fuck happened. And you're on on support chat with like 4 different softwares that each say, no, it's not us. It's this other it's this whatever, just like, so that's the other thing we solve, right? Because it's all in one platform. We've got our support team. They can see everything. So we're not going to point fingers because it's all right there. And we have a concierge service. So you can hire us to be like, just like, get on with me right now and figure it out with me and let's get it done. So yeah.
That's really good. I love it.
Enjoy the Mai Tais.
Enjoy the Mai Tais. Enjoy your time away because that should be a recharging time and rejuvenating time so that you can come back and conquer the world.
And it's always when you're on vacation that the shit breaks.
You're absolutely right. So what do you see as the biggest mistake other entrepreneurs make or are making currently?
Well, it's thinking that you have to master all of this stuff, that you have to put together all these different tools. And it's just like, well, I just have to like sit down and figure it out. No, there are definitely things that you just have to sit down and figure out in business, but like gluing together like 9 different platforms isn't one of them. It's so important that we spend our energy where we're genius, where we get energy and then we get the right help. And I think this is another mistake that a lot of us make. I've definitely made that many times where we'll just like, well, I'll just let you figure it out. Like where we're just like abdicating responsibility. And like, there has to be a level of ownership there, but it doesn't mean that you have to sit there and like you have to take ownership of it, but you don't have to spend the time like on the details in that level.
I am definitely the one that will abdicate on stuff that I don't understand. So someone else figure this out and tell me what to do.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've done that a lot where it just didn't didn't work out. Like, you have to make some decisions for yourself and your team, and then you can get your team to execute it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, kind of going full circle back, because I was thinking about, you growing up in the childhood and now becoming this person, like we're having this amazing conversation. And I'm thinking about, I don't know, that 10-year-old boy, that 20-year-old young man, that 30-year-old, entrepreneur that's trying to be a billionaire. What advice that's introverted and feels, like when you said you're a weirdo, I'm like, well, we're all weird. But like in our own unique ways, right? In our own beautiful, unique ways. I'm thinking like Calvin's got this amazing wisdom to tell that 10-year-old, that 20-year-old, that 30-year-old that feels like a weirdo, that feels different from everyone else, that doesn't feel comfortable in their own skin and is scared to put themselves out there. What would you have to say to them, knowing what you know now?
10-year-old me, I would say, it's not you that's wrong. It's everyone around you that don't see what you're seeing. Like, you're okay. I know it sucks now. You're going to be fine. Don't lose this. Remember what makes you you, and you got to do shit right now to fit in. Cause like you're so dependent on everybody to survive, but don't forget the core of who you are and just know that that's right and true.
Yeah. How about 20-year-old?
20-year-old, have some fucking fun. Like, let loose. Don't be in such a hurry to get somewhere. Take some chances. Let the computer stay and see what the fuck happens. It's going to be okay. Yeah.
And 30-year-old.
So, yeah. Well, I'm trying to think also, because like 25 was when I moved to New York, is when I moved to the US. And
so that was a pivotal time.
It was, for sure. Yeah. I'm still here. So 25 years later, I'm still in New York. Yeah, that's huge. So there was a courage there to go make a move like that. Like none of my friends did. And then the courage to actually stay with it. Like I know so many people were like, oh my God, I wish that like I could make a move like that. And then they don't. And there are some who do, but then they go back and they're like, I wish I could stay. And then like, well, you can, yeah. but then they go back and then they regret. It's like, oh, like I should have, so yeah, 30. So on my 40th birthday, or the day before my 40th birthday, I was still having these like suicidal thoughts. It would come like once a month. I'd get depressed and just like be not serious. Like I was never gonna actually do it, but like the thought was there, right? And it was almost like PMS. It would come like on a monthly cycle or something. And I emailed one of my heroes, Gay Hendricks, if you know Gay, author of The Big Leap and a bunch of books.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So we became friends some years back. And so I emailed him and was like, and I wrote, I'm feeling so depressed and I feel like I kind of want to kill myself. And like, tomorrow's my birthday. And he's like, just hang in there, boy. Boy, like life only really starts to get good after 40. And that, like, there's something so beautiful about that. I think, like, back to the father thing, right? Like, we men, we need male mentors, male role models. No mother, however loving, can ever make a boy into a man. It just won't happen. And so Gay is one of those people that has been that father, that mentor for me. And in that moment, it was like, it just sunk in a way that like, oh shit, life's not supposed to be good necessarily before 40. And just hanging there.
It can be.
It can be, right. But for me, like literally that, like, I was like, oh shit, like maybe it's getting better and better. Like I had this like 40, I'm done, right? And it really became the turning point where from that moment on, the depression's hasn't been there at all since, not for even a moment. And like the 40s were by far the best decade in my life in every aspect, in every way. And so what I'd say to my 30-year-old self is like, hang in there, man. It's only getting better from here.
The best is yet to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so much wisdom in Calvin's words there, everybody. And I hope that somebody, in fact, I don't even hope, I know somebody who is listening will get something from this, that may be a little bit more recluse, that feels like they're a weirdo, that may have some depressive thoughts because they haven't accomplished what they feel like they should have, or because they haven't lived into their gift, or they haven't allowed themselves to lean into that spiritual being of themselves. I've always been told by one of my mentors that you're best equipped to help your former self. And that's why I wanted to ask you the question, Calvin, because you and I are different in that respect where, you were more reclusive in computer. I found my outlet through sports and team sports at that. So I fit in because I was good at this thing over here that happened to be a team-oriented thing. So even though I didn't necessarily get the approval or love at home that I craved necessarily, I had friends and I became a little bit popular because I was in the sports realm and was pretty good at that. And so it's a difference, right? When you're more, that's like us humans are built to be in community with others. Yeah. And so for those that are coders or gamers or stuff that just you happen to be more of a loner, just know that you are born for community and you're in the human to human connection. And Calvin and I talked pre-show, he's going to come out here next time to do this because I want to give him a hug. That heart to heart connection is one of those things that you cannot get through a Zoom screen. You cannot get through your headset on your game or coding with anyone else. Like you can form a connection, but there's a spiritual being that lies in each of us that craves human face-to-face interaction and connection because we're energy vibrant beings. And so that's why COVID was such a detriment to the whole world, not even just our country. That isolation caused a lot of mental problems that we're not even going to see the full gamut of what has happened mentally wise for probably a number of years till the statistics really come out for our young children, for our adults, but we know suicide attempt numbers have gone up tremendously over the past couple of years. So we do know that. And I'm in those communities because of previous, my father-in-law, Calvin, took his own life. So I've talked openly on the show about that. And it's just one of those things where I've been passionate about, especially men's brain health, since that being. So thank you for your words of wisdom. And now there's one topic that Calvin and I share actually a little bit of passion of that he said he doesn't get the opportunity to talk about as much. And I want to give us the opportunity to talk about a little bit, which is unifying the left and the right. Mm-hmm. And I want to get your take and your words of wisdom here, because I'll give you my brief explanation of why I want to talk about this, because I believe we got to stop identifying as a party, as a color, like vote blue no matter what. Well, why? What does that mean? Like that, like that's who you are in entirety, and you agree 100% with that platform? Like, I think that we're all Americans and that they control us through division. And because they know that they have all the power when they can keep us as far away from each other as possible.
Yeah.
But if we were actually to unify and come together, we could actually take back our country. But tell me more about your passion around it.
Yeah. So what I realized was like, I was someone who didn't pay much attention to politics. As a kid, in Denmark, I got somewhat interested, but I never fully kind of resonated with either side. I was like, no, they get it wrong. They get it wrong. It didn't really jive with me. And when I came in Denmark, I was always more right wing than left wing if I had to pick a side. When I came to the US, I naturally gravitated to the Democrats because all my friends in the tech world everybody's Democrats. The Republicans were like, they're racist, they're bigots, and they're like, blah, blah, blah. Right. That was like, okay. And then after Trump started running, and especially after he got elected, I started to kind of question some things. It was actually comedy, late night comedy that broke me because they were so obviously disingenuous and not funny. Trump broke late night comedy. Jon Stewart used to be funny. Like after Trump, it wasn't funny anymore. Yeah. So that got me starting to research and question and read a ton of books. And I kind of switched. I wouldn't say I switched sides, but I definitely switched away from the Democrats. And I realized that the whole thing, left and right, Democrat, Republican, they're both corrupt and, united against the people. So it's not that. But what I realized was I had the same goals, whether I was Democrat, like I was the same person. I had the same ambitions. I want people to be happy, healthy, safe, prosperous, right? Thriving economy, a planet that can sustain human life, animal life for, millennia to come, right? Those are all the outcomes that I want. Doesn't matter which party I belong to. Those are the outcomes that I want to see. I think those are the outcomes that most of us want to see. Yeah, I know I'm going out on a limb here, but I think those are roughly at a very high level, right? And so then it just becomes a question of, well, what is the best path to get there? And now we're in the realm of evidence. We're in the realm of experiments. We're in the realm of entrepreneurship, right? Hey, I want this outcome. What if we did this? What if we did that? You do a rice analysis or something, right? And then you come up with some ideas and you test them out and you're just like, oh, we do this. This is the result. Okay, great. Of course, the way government runs is nothing of the sort. Right? But if you start with saying, hey, what are the high level outcomes that we want? And then let's start experimenting. It's a whole different conversation.
Yes. 100%. So backstory on me, Calvin, is when I was in the financial industry, I actually started out on the opposite side. I was mostly conservative. Mm-hmm. I quote unquote identified as a Republican in that 2000.
You're one of the bigots. Oh no!
Yeah, I know. I'm all the is. I'm all the is. I was at least, and now and so from 2002 to 2012 ish, let's say, I was I would have identified as Republican. And I started going to DC as part of this government relations delegate program my company was running. And I went for 6 years making these visits. And I would talk to congressional members, Senate members. I would talk to their staffers. I would watch these people lie to my face, and then I'd be in a cigar bar later. And, I just watched them on TV screaming at each other. And I'd be in a cigar bar later, and they're yucking it up together. Or I'd go to a golf course in DC, and they're in a foursome together. And I watched all this happen. And by the way, if you ever go to DC and you go to these rooms, like you feel an ickiness. Like if you're a perceptive person at all and you have any emotional like tenets about you and you're like, you actually get a feeling of gross when you go there. Yeah. And so I came back from that experience and I'm like full blown libertarian, like screw both these parties. It just doesn't make sense. They're out to screw us all. And now I'm in the point where I'm like, I don't identify as anything. It's not about who is right. It's about what is right. And that's what you're talking about with the outcomes. Yeah. It's like most of us actually, if we sat down with each other and we had a Democrat and a Republican and even two independents sitting here, the four of us would agree on 90% of the stuff. There'd be a couple social issues we would vehemently disagree upon. You know, you get a staunch Republican that's anti-abortion, you get a staunch liberal that's pro-choice, and they could argue on that social, but that's a below the line issue. We should all be worried about the economy and all. But by the way, that's what they get us arguing about, is that below the line stuff. So it keeps us away from the stuff that matters to everybody.
Right. Well, and the other part is like even those areas where we disagree, if you dig deeper underneath that, right? Like, take something controversial like trans issues, right? Mm-hmm. Well, like, it's either like you're for trans or against trans or something, right? Like, that's not the issue, right? Mm-mm. Like, there are people that have real pain. Do we care about them? Yeah. Like, my heart breaks, right? Well, okay. Well, what is the solution? Well, let's figure out, find out what the different issues are, where we have to dig in there, right? And then maybe there is like some kind of like medical interventions that we want to decide should happen, when there's like, well, who pays for it and how is that handled? Like, there's a lot of more granularity to each and every issue that we can get into, but we never get into that.
No, and it's so much. That's a great issue to bring up, because, for instance, on my part, I have 3 daughters and a son. Mm-hmm. I don't want a male that transitioned to woman to compete against my daughters in sports. There's already we have different we have different bodies. Right. Like I can have that stance and also hold space that if they, as an adult, want to transition to being a woman, and that's how they feel most comfortable and loved in this society, then by all means you should do that. I can full out say that I don't want you competing against my girls in sports, because that's like, say, I always use the example, like, put a wig on LeBron James and say he transitions, he's going to dominate women's basketball. It's just, it's biology. It's our bodies. So so that doesn't mean I'm anti-trans. That just means I have a stance that there is a chance that my daughters either are treated unfairly or potentially injured in that instance. But I can still love and support an adult, because I've hired and recruited and developed a trans woman before, and we had great conversations. And so it's just interesting how me even saying that I don't want a trans woman competing against my daughters, if I say that first and not say what I said about loving them and letting them do it, like, I'm automatically a bigot or whatever they want to call me. And it doesn't get to those issues that you mentioned about how to get the proper care and all that.
And it requires slowing way, 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 way down, right? Because as soon as you get into these conversations, everybody just starts saying opinions that they've heard. But you got to pull everything apart and get to like what's under, like you said in the beginning, like the 5 whys, right? What's underneath? How do you know that? What's your evidence? Like, what does that mean to you? What are your values about this? Like, it really takes time to slow down to that level. And most people can't do it, right? Like, if you start to ask, well, hang on, like, I just want to take that statement you just said, let's take it apart. What does that mean? What does that mean? And then they're like, well, but Trump, right? Like, then they jump because they can't do that. And that's fair. Like Tom Sowell, there's a famous quote from Tom Sowell, which is like, most people, it's not that Johnny doesn't want to think, is that he doesn't know what thinking is. He confuses it with feeling. Like, most people don't know how to think. I have compassion for that. I get it. It's just, we have to have the conversation, we have to be able to think.
And we have to question our questions. We have to ask better questions. We have to question our questions and become scientists of ourselves and seek outside counsel of different opinions and have those conversations with people. Otherwise, we're not going to learn.
And the breakthroughs happen when you don't know the answer, right? When you ask a question that you don't know the answer. If you know the answer, there's no breakthrough. Let's ask questions we don't know the answer to.
That's so good. Well, so before I ask my last question, I just want to acknowledge you, like the person. I'm so glad we got to meet at you're 49 years old, because the evolved human you've become and the heart that you show and the knowledge and wisdom that you have to be able to help that former version of yourself is really beautiful, Calvin. Like you're helping a lot of people, because I've known people like you and I haven't been able to connect with them because I wasn't them. I was the popular jock. or quote unquote popular, but was still, a flawed and broken human being as well. But I couldn't identify with them because I wasn't them. You get to identify with a certain segment of society. And by the way, for everyone listening, that's all of us. We all come from different walks of life, and we're all flawed and all broken in one way or another. And that's why that quote of being able to, you're best equipped to help the previous version of yourself holds true for all of us. Yeah. And so, Calvin, I just want to acknowledge your heart and your spirit. And it's been an amazing conversation today.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to meet you as well. One of my mentors, a guy named Dan Martell, he says, we're here to become the person we needed most in our darkest days and share that person with the world. Who's that person that would have been able to exactly connect with and be there for the version that you were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it is?
That hit hard because I had someone ask me yesterday that was going through a dark period where he said, Josh, how did you not want revenge? When the hurt came up, how did you turn that away? And because I had been so hurt in a similar scenario to this person, not exact same situation, but I was able to say I turned it into a blessing. 2.5 years removed, the blessing was it showed me who was real and who wasn't.
Yeah.
In that darkest time, it showed me who was there in my life because they wanted a piece of me or they thought being around me could get them something. And it showed me who was my true friends. And I was able to give, what's that?
I was going to say, one of those people that you discovered were real as you.
Yes, you're absolutely right. In my realest, truest form in that dark period, like you mentioned. Yeah. And so that just hit home so hard, because I was asked that question yesterday. So last question, what is an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others do not?
Have you read Autobiography of a Yogi?
I have not.
Have you heard of it?
I have not. Here's my rule. Anytime people that I trust, it has to be two people that I trust, bring up the same book twice, right? So a second person to mention it. Now I put it in my Amazon cart.
Okay. All right. And now we got to get balloons. So Paramahansa Yogananda wrote Autobiography of a Yogi. It's about his life as a yogi growing up in India, all his gurus, all his masters, and moving to the US and starting Self-Realization Fellowship. And it's an incredible book. And it was the only book that Steve Jobs had on his iPad when he died. And it's the book that Steve presumably or allegedly would read every year. And it's an incredible story. And in that book are gurus and evolved masters that are hundreds of years old that know how to materialize in multiple places at the same time. I believe that that's possible to do. We might not, you and I, figure it out in our lifetimes, but eventually, we'll figure it out. And some people obviously did already, and some people are doing it already. But as a society, that's what's possible, and that's where we're headed. That's where I want to support us in heading. I would love to fucking prove them right and figure this out for myself. That would be fun.
So how many times have you read it?
2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's some incredible stories. There's a story of a guy who one of his gurus was out of thin air, just manifests a whole castle out of nothing. And it's a real castle. It's really there with stones and there's food and a meal and all that stuff. And when you think about it, right, everything consists of atoms or electrons, and they're really waves or particles or waves or particles, right? So they're kind of this amorphous thing. It's energy. Everything's energy. And everything's information. And it looks real to us, right? Like it's, like you knock it, it feels like, but that's just inertia in the energy field that you're feeling when you do that. And so there's no law of physics, law of nature that says that this stuff is not possible. And yet we go around pretending like this 3D world is fucking real. No, it's not. I mean, that's the reality of it, but we forget. And then we get so consumed by it.
That's so hard for most people to even wrap their mind around. I would say start with some maybe Joe Dispenza stuff if you're even struggling with wrapping your mind around that, and then work yourself to this Yogi book. So that's incredible. Because I've only skimmed the surface on this stuff, and I really do appreciate Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and I could see myself getting into this book as well, and just and going pretty deep into it. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Another one that's awesome is Lynn McTaggart's The Field, where she goes into a lot of the quantum science of it, which is really fascinating too. Have you been to a Joe Dispenza event?
I haven't. And I just had a friend go and said it was life-changing, and says I got to get it on my calendar. So I'm
planning on doing the one in July if you want to go.
All right. Yeah. Let's get some information on that. I got a couple things in July already booked, but there should be, depending on the timing, could be some time to do that.
Cool.
So where can people follow you, or if they need Simplero's help, where should we be directing the Spartans?
I think the coolest thing is go find me on Instagram. Is my name at Calvin Correli. My last name is Correli. Go follow me there, and then hit me up in the DMs and say that you saw me on the Spartan show. Spartan Leadership Podcast. And then, especially if you want to do me a huge favor, just say one thing that resonated with you. Like, I don't know about you, Josh, but that's the best, right? When you hear from people like, hey man, this thing you said that really stuck with me. That really spoke to me.
Yeah. Especially people that you don't even know are following or listening, and you get the surprise. It's such a hit of dopamine. To get that compliment, or just, I didn't even know, I don't even remember saying that. And you were able to take that away, and it made a change and difference in your life. So yes, please do that. Please pay him that compliment.
It's why you do this. I'm sure I can feel it on you, right? Like, you do this not because this is a tool for me to make money. You do this because you want to have that impact on people. And so when people go out of their way to actually reflect that back to you, makes the whole thing worth it.
100%. Well, everybody, follow Calvin. Make sure you pay him that compliment. Remember that good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.